Hello again, everyone. I have shown these sketchbooks before right after they came out of a steaming pot, and I'll tell you why if you didn't see the previous video in a minute. And then this is the dried version of the journals, which I said in that prior video, which I'll link down below, that I would show at some point on the channel. So for those of you that have not yet watched that prior video, these are eco-printed journals, and this is without mordant. Mordant is something that will make the colors more vibrant and stay in the papers or fabric or whatever it is you're dyeing. So this is without mordant, and I did these as part of the Flowers Magic Challenge. I'm not going to put a link to that now, or maybe I will, but it's no longer going. It was a free course, and then I think it's been going on for at least a year, but like they did it last year and then did it this year. But I did want to show you the results of these once everything was dry, because when I showed it at first, it was really super wet. And part of the reason why it took me a while to do this video is because it took forever for this larger journal to dry. This one also took a while to dry, but this one was like, I'd say it was like 2 weeks or more before it was finally dry. But now it is dry, and I'll do a flip through, and I have some bonus sketchbooks that I made with eco dyeing based on what I learned doing these. So those will be a little bit more, not necessarily vibrant, but they'll have more like flower shapes on them than these turned out. So let me go ahead and do the smaller one first. And I think both of these actually came out pretty well. There's not a whole lot of really vivid flower prints in here, but even with just sort of the bleeding of the color of the flowers, I think it gave a really nice kind of aged look. You can kind of, you can actually see some flower markings here. So it had sort of the effect of almost like putting tea or coffee on some of this stuff. All right, so let's go ahead and get in here. And I used all kinds of papers in here. There were papers that already had stuff on there. There were blank pages, there were tissue pages, and all kinds of things. Like I said, I would recommend seeing the first video that I've linked to so that you can see, because I go into more detail about what all the materials are. But yeah, so as you can see here, you're really just getting sort of faint color from the petals that I put in here. And before I did this, I did not know which, actually let me zoom in a little bit so that I can, at least for the smaller book. I did not know which flowers would release their color more, because there's some well-known flowers that will do this very easily. Apparently marigold is one of them, and I just did not have any marigold. So basically I got a big bunch of flowers from, you know, Whole Foods or something like that, and it was a mixed bunch of flowers. And so basically I just tried all of those flowers and a couple of extras that I got from our yard. We don't have a lot of flowers in our yard, partially because we live in Colorado and partially because we're not very good gardeners. So there are only a few of those. But I think, you know, for just sort of random flowers, I think it did turn out well. And you can see actually this coloring on this page is because this page had water-soluble gouache on it, and it actually bled through, which I really like the effect of. And here I had some flower stems, and some of this is the wrinkle of the paper. I sort of pressed these under some heavier things, but they're gonna have some wrinkles. And here's some more little like sprigs of things. You can kind of see that there is an outline of some things. This one didn't really do much. And this was watercolor paper that I had already done sort of an initial watercolor abstract painting on. And what I was kind of surprised to see is that the colors on the watercolor, from the watercolor paper, did not really bleed. So that's kind of interesting. I don't know if it's just because it was all kind of bound up and it was holding the color there, but it didn't bleed very much, if at all. And you can still see sort of like the little stems that I put there. This is one of the better ones with some of the petals. I just kind of put petals across the page here. I think it turned out pretty well there. The pages with acrylic kind of resisted the dye, although I think, well, I can't tell if this is some bleed through from the prior one, but it seemed like some of the pages bled through and you could see it on the other page. So the page that was not painted came out like this. And all the papers worked pretty well, but I think the watercolor paper, because this is the back side of the watercolor paper, definitely worked the best. So the other books that I did, which I'm going to show you, I did in watercolor paper only because I figured those worked the best. And you can still see some dried petals in here. I really did try to get everything out, but it didn't, some of them just didn't come out. And this is actually kind of interesting. So there's like this faint outline of a leaf here, which I wonder if this had been white paper instead of craft colored paper. This might even be packing material. Whether that would have shown up better, but it's kind of interesting that you have that imprint there. And again, this is one of the better ones here with the colors, and then you have this leaf here as well. Here is just sort of some bleedy color. And what was kind of interesting is this was a fabric that I had dyed with madder root in a previous course. And the madder root color, which is sort of this orangish red, completely bled out, and I don't see any trace of it in the book. So, and the plants didn't really stick very well, or they didn't imprint very well. It could have also been the plants that I used on that page might not have been good. Because again, some flowers will not print at all and some will, and I just kind of used whatever I had. So yeah, you can see some little petals here. Is that, no, that wasn't watercolor paper, but also this is a little bit of a thicker white paper, which I think works a little better. And again, but like I was saying, I tried to take all these little petals and things off, but some of them were, oops, and that one actually just released. So some of them were kind of embedded in the paper, so I couldn't really get them out. And this, I think, is from the flowers on the back page, which I kind of used. I still had some flowers left from my bunch of flowers, and just happened to be that most of the ones that I had left were the ones that printed really well here. So that's also what I used on my watercolor paper. Again, the darker papers don't seem to print as well, but this came out really, really nicely. Also here, I just put a whole flower instead of petals, and I think I liked that effect more. Because here, I mean, this is a really great imprint here of that flower. Pretty good one here as well. Again, this is the watercolor paper. And this side is just a little bit obscured. You've got a little bit of extra up here. Again, the book pages didn't really take much, even though this was up against this, and it stained here, but not on my book page. And some pretty good stuff here. It's very fluid and abstract and not really, this came out well too, but it's not very, very defined. This is more sort of, you know, if you want some interesting effects, but not necessarily things that look like flowers. All right, so let's get to the larger one. I'm gonna zoom out just a little bit so that I can see a little bit again. There we go. So that you can see the whole book here. And I can't really tell, I can't really decide whether this one worked out better than the other one. I think the smaller one did work out a little bit better because there aren't as many really nice prints on this one, but it did have some really interesting coloring. And actually this might be madder root, this coloring here, because I had another fabric in the middle here which had madder root on it, which actually obviously got washed out. So that's what this might be. The tissue papers, this is actually a deli paper. You can't really see much on that one. This came out a little bit okay. And I think I also steamed these for too long. I actually did some research afterwards and found that it's actually a little better in some instances if you steam it for less time. And I just went a little too long. Yeah, so these are kind of interesting. I think these might have been either rose petals or a combination of rose petals and the leaves from the roses, which also print. So those came out kind of nice. Same here and here. So you're really just getting like some muddy papers basically. And these were rose petals, and this is on a on treated National Geographic pages. And it came out okay on there. And another interesting thing, and I think probably most people want to avoid this when they're making eco prints, but I had some pen marks on one of the pages, and I actually really like how they bled onto the other page. So I think that's a bonus for me, but that's a good thing to know, that if you have anything written in pen, or probably any kind of media, there is the chance that it will bleed onto the other page. And here we have another full flower that I pushed in here that looks really nice. And here we have sort of the ghost of a flower up here. And these turned out okay. These were all rose petals, I believe, and maybe some rose branches, but you really got some like petal detail there. Roses will print, obviously. And then here, I think that might have been the leaves again. Tissue paper completely fell apart, but once it dried, this rip happened when it was wet, but once it dried, it seemed to hold its integrity again, so I'm not too worried about it. This was another sheet of paper that had gouache on it, so that's what went on to this page here. Not sure what the darker colors here were, and this tissue paper kind of fell apart when it was wet. And again, this just got some darkening on it. This was another pretty good one. This was onion skin and some rose petals. So onion skin will also release its color pretty well. I think both yellow and red onion skin will work about the same. But I can't remember. This might have been red onion skin. I can't remember now. And it actually even printed on this deli paper, which didn't print in the other book. And you can actually see here some more defined shapes on the other side. And then this was rose petals again. So like I said, it's kind of like a nice abstract-y thing. And this was just the rose leaves here in the middle. And I think this one is one of the ones that came out the best in here, because you get kind of this watery effect in the back, and then you have these nice prints. And again, the fabric did not really print. And I think part of it could be that I steamed it too long, but I'm not sure. So I'm not really sure what I'll end up doing with that. This had again, some nice abstract-y stuff going on. I think this was more onion skin here. And this was another, this is the other side of the deli paper. So the deli paper will print pretty well with the onion skin. And then I still have a bunch of petals stuck here. But it seemed like most of the flowers I had, I just got a mixed bunch of flowers. Again, this is the water-soluble gouache here bleeding onto the other pages. The mixed bunch that I got at Whole Foods worked pretty well. So that was sort of something to use in a pinch, I suppose. Yeah, and these are all kinds of little tiny flowers that were in clumps, which I think turned out pretty well there. And if you use mordant on your pages, they're going to turn out completely differently. You're probably going to have different colors. You're going to have imprints that are more defined. I really liked this little leaf imprint here that printed on both pages. And there's another little one down here that turned out really nicely, I thought. But even just with the abstract stuff, although see, you can see here like some of these little stems pressed in and showed up really well. And again, I do wonder if I had used less time, if I had steamed for less time, whether that would have made a difference. And here, this is a really thick paper with a lot of acrylic on it, and it even got sort of a leaf imprint here. And here's another pretty good leaf print on this side. Here it just kind of smudged out. And yeah, you can see a little bit of a flower there. So I think at some point I will kind of play around with mordant. I think for the most part you're supposed to dip your paper into the mordant as opposed to dipping your items that you're going to print in the mordant, but you never know. But anyway, so here are a couple of watercolor only books that I think actually turned out really, really well. So I learned lessons from those, and so I used the watercolor paper. I used flowers that I knew would print, and some other flowers that I didn't know if they would print, but I thought they might, just based on which flowers printed there. And I steamed for less time. And let's see, let's go ahead and go through this one first. And I also did a lot of just the whole flower there instead of sprinkling petals, which I kind of liked that look better. Although this is onion skin, yet again. Onion skin worked really well. And I used some different size pages to kind of give it some interest. And this was a big, sort of like twisty little piece of flower with all these little yellow buds on it. And I think it turned out really nicely on this page. And I did layer things between each page so there would be stuff on there front and back, but this one didn't come out as well. And here I have some more rose petals. And here, this flower got a little blurry, but I actually really like that effect. And now that I'm thinking about it, let me zoom in a little bit more again. And this was a big yellow flower with a really big middle, and that I think came out really well too. And you can actually see some of it on the side. And here's another one of those little branches with little flowers coming off of it. So I think as far as, here's another really nice one, as far as doing prints, eco prints without mordant, I think it might be more interesting overall. This was another really big one with a big middle, and I kind of smushed it in there, which is why I have a big indent in the middle. I'm not sure I want to keep going with no mordant. What I might end up doing is, because apparently you can use soy milk as a mordant. This print actually came out really well on that one. And this again, I think is rose petals and onion skin. But yeah, you can use soy milk as a mordant, and I might just get some of that and try that and see if that improves the color for some of these things. And I think I might go and specifically search out some flowers. Kind of nice. I think that was a bleed through from the other side, but it looks really nice. That I know will print. I want to search out some flowers that are a little bit different and I know will print. I have taken only one other eco printing class, and that was in person before the pandemic, and that was on fabric, and they had a lot of chemicals available, which were kind of, you know, nice to have those. And then, and we didn't have to figure out a formula and all that. All right, so that's the end of those. I think that these were a little bit more, I'm gonna zoom out again. I think these were a little bit, these little ones, ooh, let me get in there again. These were a little bit more successful than these were, but you know, this is like basically with no experience of eco dyeing paper, and very little experience eco dyeing in general. And I think the effects were kind of fun. And I do plan to go through and maybe do some more stuff on these pages. But I haven't really decided with these two, but I know with the smaller and the bigger one, I probably will do some sort of mixed media journaling in them. But this is really just a follow-up to that first video where I showed you what these look like wet. And so now you can see the final result. All right, well, that's all I had for you today. If you have any questions, feel free to ask below and I'll answer when I can. I know this is a really kind of a complicated area of art making, and I definitely don't know all the answers, but I might be able to point you in the right direction if you have some questions and want to get started on this yourself. So feel free to subscribe to keep track of future videos on my channel. If you enjoyed this video, give it a like. I hope you join me next time, but in the meantime, have a great day. Thanks so much. Bye.